How aliens went to the zoo. When the aliens first arrived on Earth, they didn't expect the zoo to be such a strange place. For them, galactic explorers, this planet was like a living museum full of mysteries and wonders. They landed on Earth not to conquer the planet or run experiments, but to understand what culture was and why humans loved animals so much. So, a group of aliens from the Sirius star system, tin-headed Larpus, the gigantic transformer TS-Clom, and their scientific assistant HRRK, who was, well, the third leg of Larpus, decided to visit a zoo. They had studied galactic fauna, but the local inhabitants were completely unpredictable. Chapter 1. The first encounter with the monkeys. As soon as the aliens stepped into the zoo, everyone held their breath. The local inhabitants, humans, looked like it was their first time meeting extraterrestrials. The truth was, no one knew that the aliens weren't there to cause trouble. But they were so huge and strange that a few kids started running away screaming, "Mom, it's Batman!" Larpus was slightly confused. His 10 heads were simultaneously trying to figure out what to do, while TS-Clom, who wasn't known for his high emotional intelligence, attempted to explain to the crowd. "We come in peace. We're here for a tour." But at that moment, the first exhibit approached them, a monkey who, as everyone later started calling it, was the embodiment of a famous comic book hero. The monkey, clearly with a sense of humor, thought they had come from space to show off their incredible strength and jumping ability. The monkey walked up to Larpus and suggested they train together, tossing the alien onto a tree. Larpus was stunned but reluctantly agreed. He figured it was for science. "Well, this must be a scientific experiment," Larpus said, as he awkwardly clung to the nearest tree with his 10 arms, trying to leap. But the result wasn't exactly what he expected. TS-Clom burst out laughing. His enormous body, made up of thousands of fragments, looked like a complex maze, and when Larpus attempted to leap, one of TS-Clom's parts accidentally bumped into a child, causing them to yell, "Mom! TS-Clom bit me!" The monkey, seeing this, took it as a failed trick and began giggling. Meanwhile, the zoo's staff member, who had just realized these were aliens, was now running toward them. Do you want to show a trick? Or should we get back to safe behavior?" asked the staff member. We just came for a tour," Larpus said, his 10 heads now all expressing embarrassment. The monkey jumped again, continuing to use all its energy to outwit the aliens. They realized that the monkey, apparently, lived by its own set of jungle rules. The aliens decided this was an interesting lesson and moved on. Chapter 2. Elephants and Galactic Physics. The next stop was the elephant enclosure. The aliens didn't immediately understand what these creatures were. They were so large that, despite their planetary ability to move through space, they still seemed quite small. "Why do they walk so slowly?" asked TS-Clom, observing the elephants. "It's normal for elephants. They don't hurry. They need time to think about life," explained one of the zookeepers. Larpus, who loved to travel between galaxies, decided to run an experiment to see how fast they could move with that much mass. He began applying his technological knowledge to speed up one of the elephants. "This won't work, Larpus," TS-Clom said, watching the alien try to install a rocket engine in the elephant. "Elephants don't need turbines. They can move slowly and gracefully." And then, something miraculous happened. The elephant, sensing the aliens were trying to do something to it, suddenly took off at a terrifying speed, as if it had just received an energy boost. This was the fastest elephant on Earth. That's impressive, but don't do it again. T.S. Clom and Larpus yelled simultaneously as the giant animal slammed into the enclosure wall and flew out. Quickly catching the elephant mid-flight, the aliens realized an important lesson. Even with technology, we can't always understand the behavior of local creatures. Chapter 3: Penguins and Galactic Dance. Their final stop was the penguin exhibit. The aliens watched them with great interest because these tiny black creatures looked remarkably similar to a certain species of highly developed animals from their home planet. "We could do something like this," Larpus shouted, attempting to imitate the penguins. But his tin-headed figure was completely unsuited for such dances. At first, the penguins watched with suspicion, then began clapping their flippers, as if showing respect for the aliens' dance moves. T.S. Clom, who didn't particularly like dancing, was convinced this was the moment to give alien art a chance. "This is not just a dance. It's art," T.S. Clom said resolutely, and soon the entire group of aliens was involved in a penguin show, which turned out to be one of the most successful galactic events in terms of public observations. The zoo was closed to other animals for the day, and the penguins became the stars of the party. The aliens were satisfied. "Sure, let's continue the adventure of the aliens at the zoo." Chapter 4: The Lion Encounter. After the penguin spectacle, Larpus, T.S. Clom, and HRRK wandered deeper into the zoo. They approached the lion enclosure, where a stoic. The aliens stood there for a moment, quietly observing these creatures, unsure of how to interpret their behavior. Larpus leaned forward, his tin head squinting to get a better look. "What are they doing?" Larpus asked, genuinely puzzled. "They're just resting," T.S. Clom replied. "Lions do that a lot. They conserve energy for when they need it." Larpus scratched his multiple chins thoughtfully. "Is that why they look so confident?" "I think it's more than confidence. It's the power of being at the top of the food chain. But we are more advanced than they are. We could easily defeat them with our superior technology." "Not the point, Larpus," T.S. Clom said with a sigh. "The lions don't need technology to feel superior. They've got their instinct." At that moment, a zookeeper approached them, looking somewhat hesitant, but intrigued by the spectacle of these enormous aliens standing so near the lions. "I don't suppose you'd like to try feeding them?" the zookeeper asked, half-jokingly, half-worried. Larpus turned to him, his tin heads moving in various directions as they processed the request. "Feeding lions? How would that work?" Larpus said, looking at T.S. Clom for guidance. "You're not seriously thinking of feeding them, are you?" T.S. Clom asked, raising one eyebrow. "Well, they are technically guests. Maybe we could learn something from their method of food consumption," Larpus said, leaning toward the lions. The zookeeper seemed a bit taken aback but then shrugged, clearly curious about what these aliens were going to do. He handed them a long stick with a piece of raw meat on the end. "Just be careful. They can be unpredictable." Larpus, fascinated by the concept of feeding, tried to approach the lions. His tin head swiveled in different directions, and he awkwardly extended the stick with the meat toward the nearest lion. The lion looked at the offering with an unimpressed gaze, then yawned dramatically, as if mocking the whole attempt. T.S. Clom chuckled. "You're wasting your time, Larpus. This isn't how they do things. They hunt for their food. You can't just hand them a snack and expect a show. It's not about the snack. It's about understanding the psychology of feeding," Larpus replied confidently. But before Larpus could say anything else, the lion stood up, took one giant step toward him, and almost as if to punctuate the entire lesson, sniffed his enormous alien form. Then, with a huff, the lion sat back down. "See?" T.S. Klom grinned. "They're just reminding you of their natural superiority. You can't trick them with your fancy technology." Larpus stepped back, scratching his head. "Fair enough. I guess they're not interested in our space food." The zookeeper chuckled nervously. "Yeah, lions have pretty high standards." They spent a few more minutes observing the lions in silence, watching their powerful muscles ripple beneath their thick fur. Larpus was beginning to understand something about their power that no amount of technology could replace. Chapter 5. The Giraffes and Cosmic Conundrums. Next, the group moved to the giraffe enclosure. The aliens were taken aback by the giraffes' long necks, towering over everything in sight. The giraffes were peacefully nibbling leaves from the tall trees, occasionally glancing down at the visitors with curiosity. "These creatures are tall, very tall," HRK commented, his 3 legs wobbling as he tried to get a better view. "Indeed," Larpus said, eyeing the giraffes closely. "Their necks must have some sort of gravitational pull." "That's not how gravity works," T.S. Klom replied, shaking his head. "Their necks are just long. They evolved this way to reach food in tall trees." Larpus stood there for a moment, trying to process this new information. So they just reach food? No advanced technology? No, just biology. "Incredible," Larpus murmured. "So they don't need to develop tools to survive?" "Nope. They just stretch and eat. No space-age tools needed." T.S. Klom watched Larpus' expression, which had gone from awe to something a bit more introspective. "Is it really that shocking?" T.S. Klom asked. "You don't need technology for everything. Sometimes, it's about evolution and adaptation." Larpus let out a dramatic sigh, clearly humbled by the experience. "You're right. Maybe we've been overcomplicating things. Maybe we need to just be more giraffe-like." "That's the spirit," T.S. Klom said with a chuckle. But the giraffes weren't the only ones who caught Larpus' attention. As they stood there, watching the gentle giants, one of the giraffes approached them. It was unusually curious about the aliens and began to stretch its neck toward them. "It wants to know us," Larpus said, as the giraffe's massive head came dangerously close to his own. "Careful, Larpus," T.S. Klom warned. "That's how they explore new things." Larpus took a tentative step back, but before he could say anything else, the giraffe nudged his head, sending Larpus stumbling backward. With a resounding thud, the tin-headed alien fell into a nearby bush. "Well, that's one way to learn about boundaries," T.S. Klom observed. Larpus stood up, brushing off leaves and twigs from his multiple heads, and looked at the giraffe with renewed respect. "Maybe I should have just offered it a snack," he muttered, dusting himself off. Chapter 6. The conclusion of the zoo adventure. After a series of increasingly bizarre and humorous encounters, the aliens finally reached the zoo's exit. They had learned many things. Lions were proud and confident, giraffes were just really tall, and monkeys? Well, monkeys could teach them more about agility than any intergalactic workout routine. As they prepared to leave, the zookeeper, who had been observing them the entire day, came up to them. "You know, you guys are the most interesting visitors we've ever had. I'm pretty sure the animals won't ever forget you." "We're glad we could leave a lasting impression," Larpus said, still trying to get the last of the twigs out of his hair. "Maybe next time, we could do something with the kangaroos. They might be more cooperative." "Kangaroos?" Larpus asked, puzzled. "Oh, they're jumpers. Like monkeys, but with way more attitude." The zookeeper grinned. "Well, we've got the technology for it," T.S. Klom said, tapping his gigantic chest. "Let's go get them next time." The aliens waved their goodbyes to the zoo staff and animals, heading back to their ship. As they boarded, Larpus looked back at the zoo with a thoughtful expression. "This place, it's not just about animals. It's about learning how to exist in a world that doesn't need all our gadgets and gizmos." "Exactly," T.S. Klom said with a grin. "Sometimes the best technology is understanding nature as it is. And some things you just can't improve." "Right," Larpus said, nodding. Next stop, the kangaroos. And with that, they took off into the sky, leaving Earth Zoo behind. But their adventure in understanding life on this planet had just begun. The end. For now.